Okay, let's get started on this engine. Dismantling is our first, obviously our first action. So what I've done is I've strapped the engine down, not for safety, but to give it so it's nice and solid, because I'm going to be, there's some tight nuts there and so on. I don't want the engine wobbling about. Also for safety, I certainly don't want the thing falling off the bench. So I've just strapped it down to give us that stability. Then I think first thing we're going to do, I'm going to take this oil pipe off. That's the rocker feed to the rockers. It's plastic basically, because then I think the very next thing I'm going to do is we're going to try and get this exhaust manifold off, exhaust downpipe off, simply because when the engine's all together we can give it a bit of a wallop. If I take the head off and then try and do that, it might be more awkward. You haven't got so much to hang on to and the head's moving around the bench. I have no idea. I'm hoping that will come out okay, but we'll see. The sort of the good news, bad news, as it was, it doesn't really matter what happens to that, because about the first thing I've done is when the engine came, it had these sort of tissue paper in the ports, obviously to try and stop gunge going down. And I've just sort of oinked the tissue paper out. And the first thing, I don't know if this will focus properly, but the threads are completely gone on this side, on the exhaust port. You can probably just see a bit of thread sitting there that's just peeled off. Okay, right, it's completely gone. Like on that side, there's still some thread. On this side, the thread's just gone. There isn't any thread. So we know that we're going to have to put some inserts in, probably bronze inserts in to replace these threads anyway. So it doesn't matter too much about that as long as I get it out. It's a common problem with Commandos because basically you're screwing a sort of a metal, a steel insert into alloy. Well, obviously what tends to happen is the alloy obviously expands more than the steel, so they're always coming loose. It's a sort of designed to fail, if you know what I mean. So it's quite common because they get loose and then they just wear the threads and people tighten them back up and then they wear it again and so on. So it's not a great surprise at all. It's quite common that thread's gone. So I think we'll be putting some bronze inserts in there later on. Okay. Right. Yeah. So I'll put the camera on the stand. We'll get rid of this pipe because I don't want to melt it, basically. I mean, we'll be replacing it, but just get it out of the way, and then I'll have a go at this. Then we'll take off the rocker covers. We'll take the plugs out, and then we'll take the cylinder head off. Right, just before we start, I'll just mention I've got my spanners ready. They're all Whitworth. I've got all Whitworth spanners. And then I've got my manual ready, workshop manual, the Norton workshop manual, because that tells me the order in which to undo the cylinder head nuts. So these are actually the order for tightening, so you just do it in reverse order. So we'll be loosening number 10 first, then number 9, then number 8 and 7 and so on. Okay, and above all, I've got my freezer bags ready and a marker. So this is so important, I can't tell you. So every time I take something off, like the first thing we'll do is we'll take off this pipe, and I'll put the pipe and the associated nuts in a freezer bag, and then I will label it what it is. Okay, rocker oil feed, and then I'll be putting in cylinder head nuts, and then probably the rocker cover bolts and so on. So it's so important to do this. Don't just take stuff off and put a big pile of it on the bench, because you just don't know what goes where. You think you'll remember, but I guarantee you will not remember. And it makes assembly so much easier. You get the bag out, it's written on it. What's in it? Oh, right, yeah, these are the rocker bolts and nuts or whatever. Okay, so just, really, really do that. Okay, just make sure you just ask them. If you don't do it, you're just being lazy, and it'll come back and bite you in the ass, basically. Because when you come to put it back together, you got all these nuts and that, you don't know where they go and so on. So really, very important to do that. Okay, here we go then, our first action. I'm going to take off this pipe, and normally if you're loosening something, a swift tap is better than putting pressure on. Of course, it does depend on various things like the condition of the nut, etc. you're trying to remove. Trying to get that washer off. That won't come off. Okay, I just got the nut off, and I'll take the one off the other side. Yeah, they're not done up tight, that's okay. Done it to the correct torque. We'll be doing all the torque and figures, etc. when we come to obviously rebuild the engine. There we go, I'll take that off. And I'll put this in a freezer bag. Okay, next I'm going to try and remove this rose. So I've got the proper tool for tightening and loosening these roses, and so it fits between the fins. Now, every so often, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a double fin, and the idea is that this goes over that. It fits on one of the double fins, but of course those double fins are in the wrong place for us. So I've just got it on a single fin, with the idea being that if it does break it, I'm not too worried, I'll just have to replace it. So I've not heated anything up because I'm using the proper tool. I'm hoping it might let go anyway. We'll see. Otherwise, we'll be heating things up and trying a different approach, but I'll just see if it will go. It doesn't want to go, does it? There had to be a reason why it was still on there. Right, it's okay. Yeah, that's just the exhaust gasket has fallen out of the port on the other side. I think I'm gonna have to go on to plan B with this. Let's give it one more go, but I don't think it's going to go. No signs of it going. So I'm going to apply heat. Heat is always your friend. I'm going to get the blowtorch and heat up the cylinder head and see if that will help us. And that's why I took the rocker pipe off first, because I was fairly sure that we were going to have to heat this up. And although we'll be replacing the rocker pipe, I didn't really want to melt it on top of the engine. Well, it's finally moving, but wow, it didn't want to move. It did not want to move, but it is now finally undoing. But even though it's loose, it's it's just tight, even though I've unscrewed it. You know. Wow, woohoo! And there we have it. Oh, finally come off. Yeah. Let's have a look. I think it's been put in with gum. I think that was the problem. I think it had been gum, the exhaust sealing compound. You can imagine why that's been done. The threads still aren't even in great condition on this side. So I think we'll be replacing both sides and putting new threads in. But anyway, it's off now, but it really did not want to come off. But it was like partially seized in there, and I think the main reason it didn't want to come out is because someone had understandably, to some extent, used gum. I say understandably because, of course, they're always coming loose so much that people get the wit's end and they glue them in. And then, of course, they don't want to come out. Oh, I'm tired. That was hard work getting that out. But it's out. Hurrah. Now we can get on with taking the bits off the head and then taking the head itself off. Just by the by, there's this special tightening tool. And all tools like this you can get from the main Norton suppliers. So if you're in the UK, the three that come to mind are Andover Norton, RGM, and Norville. Okay, those are the three sort of main part suppliers, and I think most of them you'll find will sell the various special tools that we're going to be using throughout this process. So if you do need tools like this, go to the main suppliers, and they generally have the various special tools that you need to take this engine apart, or at least they make taking the engine apart an awful lot easier and putting it back together. Of course, the various special tools that are still available, which is fantastic. Often I read a manual and it'll say, these are the special tools in the back, but of course they're long gone and you can't get them anymore. But such is the pull of the Commando that they've been remanufactured and so on, all the special tools. So generally all the special tools are still available. Okay, just going to take the rocker box covers off now. Right, I've got the magic Thor hammer again, and got the soft end obviously. Just give them a slight tap and hopefully they'll just come off. I'm just chucking any gasket is being chucked. There we go. What have we got? Having an initial look under here. Initial looks good. There's oil. There doesn't seem to be any major sort of damage. We might be replacing the rocker shafts, the valves, valve guides, but we'll have a look. When we get the head off and we strip it completely. I'm just going to take the head off today. We're not going to take the internals apart. But when we do get the internals apart, then we'll make a decision as to what we're going to replace and what we're not going to replace. Also, if you use these plastic freezer bags, the advantage is that they're plastic, so they're not going to rot like paper, they're not going to let damp in. You can even put, if there's something you're a bit worried about, it's rusty, you can actually just put oil in the bag, and so that it stays, they stay in oil. So that's another, don't use cardboard boxes and paper bags and things like that. No, I'm sure you would, but that's another reason. Damp can't get in, and you can leave things, and also they're not going to leak oil everywhere because there's always bits of oil in that one, out, and you can keep them like hermetically sealed, if you like, with oil in there if you want. Everything's good. Because never underestimate how long it's going to take you to put an engine back together. You think, oh, I'll remember how to do this. Well, it can be months and months before you actually come to put the engine back together. And of course, by then you've no idea what things are and where they go. So these little head steady Allen screws, for instance, so they need a separate bag. Right, I think we're going to I'll take off the rocker shaft covers now. Again, because the engine's here, just makes taking things apart easier. Okay, one labour saving device is impact wrench. I bought this a few years ago. Someone recommended it to me and I've never looked back. Probably the second best tool I ever bought after the actual bike lift itself. Because it is a labour saving device. It just, sometimes you're taking a lot of things, nuts off and that all at once. It just makes life so much easier. See if I can work around the camera. Oh, and I have actually noticed one thing as I was taking that off that I hadn't noticed before. Unfortunately, there's a broken fin because it's underneath this exhaust port. We'll have a look at it later on. But I've noticed a damn broken fin on the barrels, which are cast iron. I'm not sure about that. We'll have to have a look. The only advantage is that it is right underneath this exhaust port, so you don't notice it. But not good. Okay, we'll take the plugs out. Be interesting to see what they look like. Mainly bits of grass which are around the bottom of the plug. Yeah, well, they look look okay. That one's, it looks like might have some oil contamination on that one. It's quite black and sooty, which could suggest oil contamination. In other words, it's burning oil. We'll see more when we get the head off. Right, we've got, I think I'm right in saying, well, probably I'll take these, I'll get rid of these carb manifold screws as well, get them out of the way. When I get everything off, then we'll take the head off. And just a final word on bagging and tagging. I've taken the Allen screws for the head steady out, and I've taken the Allen screws for the manifold out, the inlet manifold. And it's something simple like that, that they are basically the same Allen key, but they're not. The ones for the manifold are slightly longer, but they look identical. I know you probably can't see them, so I can't be bothered to take them back out of the bags. But you know, if I'd have just dumped everything on the bench, then I think, hang on, these one is, you know, it's easy to get them mixed up, and I try and put a longer screw back in a short, so, you know, and then try to tighten the head steady up, and it won't tighten up because I'm using screws that are too long. Or I can't put the manifold on because, or I do put the manifold on, but not properly because there's only a couple of threads biting because the screw's too short. So that's why, another reason why it's so important to bag and tag. Things don't get mixed up, you know, which exactly goes where. Right, so we're on the head removal.